Are you ready? Stand by.
Hey everybody, I'm Dave Hartman and welcome to the Three Gun Show. This is episode 224 where I interview former Army Ranger sniper, lawyer, author, and many other things, Ryan Kleckner, who is also the host of the Going Ballistic Podcast, creator of Rocket FFL, a professor, and he's an app developer, so many things. We cover a lot of topics in this one, but our focus is on long-range shooting, and I guarantee you're going to listen to this one twice. This podcast is brought to you by IWI. So I'm currently in Texas, and one of two rifles that I brought with me is the IWI Galil Ace. I love this rifle. It's such a joy to shoot because it's not like the normal AK where it has the weird trigger slappy thing. The controls are on the wrong sides. IWI actually updated this rifle over several years and made it to where it's ergonomically sound. I did some updates and modifications myself, including throwing on like a Midwest handguard, a Rise armament brake, dissonant arm stock, and of course my trusty Vortex Razor Gen 2E. And it's just so much fun to shoot. I'm actually going to go shoot it tomorrow. So a couple modifications I want to make on this one, because we're never truly happy with what we have, right? That's the joy of Three Gun, is we get to modify three guns. So K&S makes a precision, or K&S Precision makes a gas piston, an adjustable gas piston on this one. And I thought, wow, this Galil Ace in 5.56, it shoots so soft that I don't even need to mess with the gas on it. But then I shot Ruben Alexson's from Vortex Optics, and he has the piston in there, and it's turned down just a touch, and it's just a little bit better. So now I got to go chase that. And then, of course, I need to do something about the trigger. The IWI Galil Ace has a modified trigger, an upgraded trigger over what you would consider an AK-style trigger. But it can always be better, right? I mean, that's what we do. We modify things. So the IWI Galil Ace is something fun that I've been messing around with. It's cool to shoot something different than my normal three-gun gear, and I'm really looking forward to some additional AK matches coming up throughout the year. So IWI.us, check them out if you want to get an AK of your own, either in 5.56, 7.62 by 39, or 7.62 by 51, which is of course 308. They make all of them, and you might as well just get one of each. Hey there, and welcome to another episode of the Three Gun Show podcast, your source for techniques, training, and strategy for practical shooting. Before we get into this week's episode with Ryan Kleckner, I want to introduce you to a friend of mine, Mr. Arik Levy of the Firearms Nation podcast. Arik, how you doing?
I'm doing awesome, Dave. Thank you so much for having me on.
Man, it's great to have you on. So I was on the Firearms Nation podcast this year and early this year, and it was one of the cooler experiences of 2018 for me. And since then, I've been listening to your podcast, and you are doing your third annual Shooters Summit, November 25th through December 1st, and that's what we're here to talk about today.
Yes. So I started this back in 2016, and before I had the podcast, I did a summit. And what I wanted to do, I have that competition background. I shoot USPSA, and I also am a law enforcement officer. So I had that, the tactical training. I also had the competition training. I wanted to bring that together, and I created the summit. And I talked to some of the leaders in competition and in the tactical world, where we talked about, different strategies to make you a better shooter. And everybody, of course, has their own little take on different things, but it was very successful. It helped me launch the Firearms Nation podcast. And then from there, I had so many people saying, do another summit. So I did another summit in 2017. I doubled the size of it, and it was a crazy endeavor. I had like over 30 people, again, from both sides of the house. But this year, I wanted to do something different. So the funny thing, Dave, I bet you don't believe this, but when I talk to people after the summit, they're like, I'm a competition guy. I don't really care about all that tactical stuff. So I didn't watch it. And then, of course, the tactical guys like, those gamer guys. I'm not going to say the word that they use for them, but it starts with an F. And
funny
I don't
people.
do any of that stuff. Yeah, funny people. And I don't want to bore myself with that. For me personally, I think it's good to get both together because one helps the other.
Yeah.
But so I said, okay, I'm going to split them up from now on. So this year in 2018, I specifically went after the competition folks, and I went with Grandmasters. So the title of the summit is Making Grandmaster, because listen, bottom line, a lot of people, I don't care what shooting discipline you're doing, you want to rise to the top, you want to make GM. And for a lot of people, they look at it as like an insurmountable challenge. For whatever reasons, they're putting all the practice in, they just don't get better. They look at the GMs and they're like, I can never shoot that fast. I can never be that awesome when I'm shooting, or whatever's holding them back. I don't know. But I wanted to talk to people, not just, the world champions, which I do have. I want to talk to regular guys who have a job, who have kids, have bills, have, whatever they have going on, but they still made GM. And then like one of these guys, Paul Kerr, he made GM last year and he was on the super squad this year at nationals and came in 17th.
That's
so
awesome.
That to me is inspirational. Yes.
Well, that is cool. So you've got guys like Shane Coley, Keith Garcia, Josh Freilich, Charlie Perez, Shannon Smith, and tons more. Now these are Max. Yeah. Max Leograndis is going to be there. We know a lot of these people from the 3-gun world, and there's a lot of great USPSA shooters as well. So how does one do this? Is this like a summit that we have to go to?
Well, that was the concept, right? I wanted to make it a conference, a summit, whatever you want to call it. Shooter summit just sounded good. And instead of that you had to go there, you can watch it all from your computer, from your phone, from your iPad, whatever device that you want to watch it. It's recorded interviews each day, while the summit's going on. Different interviews are going to be released. So you have 24 hours to watch these videos. Once the videos are done, they go away. But each day there's a new one coming out. So you have a whole week. The schedule's up. You can see the ones you want to go to. If you want to get them all, you can put a lot of time in. But it is around the holidays, so people are traveling. It's good to do. But on the flip side, if you're looking at this and saying, listen, I want to watch these all, I'm not going to be able to do it, or I want to keep this forever, you can always upgrade. So let me step back. The whole summit is free. The whole summit is free to watch. You can tune in, watch it for free.
From the comfort of your own home.
Comfort of your own home. But if you want to have the summit forever, lifetime access to this, to all the interviews, plus the special bonuses, you get a podcast version of this. So if you have your whatever podcast app that you're using, you can subscribe to this. It's only for the people who upgrade to the pass, but now you can listen in your car. You can also download the audio if you want to. Some people don't have podcasts, but they can download it on their browser or whatnot. So there is bonuses. Plus each year, this year specifically, each instructor came with a drill. So this is new for this year. If you've watched the summit before, it was just a lot of interviews. This time they brought a drill. They filmed the drill talking about, why it was important to them in their path to making GM. And this is no drills were the same, but you'll get the stage diagrams. And this sounds like it's a lot of money. It's not. It's only $19.95 to get the whole pass.
Really, $20 for like the entire pass?
Yeah, and as soon as if you want this, you get instant access to it. So it's actually a pretty good deal. You can review this over and over again, listen to what they're doing. And, I know we don't have a lot of time, but, some of the things is just fascinating to hear. There's a pretty big split between these, I think there's like 18 folks who I was talking to. Some of the GMs, they learned it all on their own, right? And these guys made the world champions. They learned the stuff on their own. But the other half, they went to finding a good coach or instructor and went that route. So you get these tips. You see how they shot classifiers, how they approach practice, how they approach dry fire, how much live fire do they do? What are they doing with their drills? Josh Freilich did an amazing drill. It wasn't a super long drill, but what he was doing in the drill was interesting. Now, someone like Max goes to the nth degree, Max Leograndis. His drill is very in depth, but that's who he is.
Yeah, so we're going to learn from a bunch of different personalities. You have 18 amazing guests are going to be a part of it. If people want to listen, follow along, go to shootersummit.com/3gunshow, and that link will be in the show notes for this episode as well. And if you type in the keyword Dave, you're going to get 10% off.
Right. So if they want to buy the pass, when they go to buy the pass, There's a coupon just for your listeners, and it's Dave. And
then you get all those drills.
10%.
You get stage diagrams of the drills. Is that right?
Yep.
And videos that go along with it, as well as
Correct.
the summit interviews, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, so it's a one big textbook it's alive, and I think it's a great value. I've learned so much doing this. It's been a great experience. And another thing I liked about these guys, that they're all willing to share it. You learn about them and how they really want to help people.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to be watching Arik once again from the Firearms Nation podcast and Shooter Summit. And again, go to shootersummit.com/3gunshow to check it out yourself. Arik, thanks for joining me, man.
Thank you so much, Dave. And thank you to your listeners.
Now on to this week's show. Ryan Kleckner is on the podcast this week. Man, Ryan has an incredible resume. You heard me mention some credits at the top of the show, but I'm just going to reiterate them here. So Ryan is a lawyer, a professor, a former Army Ranger sniper. He's also the host of the Going Ballistic Podcast, which is how I became familiar with him and the reason that he's on the Three Gun Show here, where he puts out like amazing information on shooting in general, like basically long range shooting, but just shooting in general. Really cool stuff. I implore you to check it out. He's also the mastermind behind Rocket FFL and the Mayday Safety app, which you'll hear us talk about at the top of the show. He's also the author of the Long Range Shooter's Handbook and Safety is No Accident. I feel like I'm missing some things here. As you'll hear in the podcast, Ryan is an amazing teacher, and he has a very casual way of explaining complex problems, which is really cool when you're talking about long-range shooting because he simplifies everything. We start off talking about Mayday Safety app. We transition into his books and why you should check them out. And then we get into the meat of the podcast, long-range shooting as it applies to precision matches and, of course, the three-gun. And here's the cool thing. Ryan's actually shot three-gun. So he puts this in context that you can understand, and he understands what we focus on in three guns. So it's really cool to hear that from him. Plus, we also destroy the 224 Valkyrie, identify the best long-range precision projectile today, and Ryan's choice for a 223 precision bullet weight. Be sure to listen after the interview because Ryan is giving away an autographed copy of his book, The Long Range Shooting Handbook, to one lucky listener, and you will want to know how to get in on it. Now, enjoy this interview with Ryan Kleckner. Welcome, everybody, to the Three Gun Show. I'm your host, Dave Hartman, and today with me is Ryan Kleckner of the Going Ballistic Podcast. Ryan, how you doing?
I'm doing great now that I'm on your show, Dave. Thanks for having me here.
Man, I am so pumped to have you. So, first off, the Going Ballistic Podcast is... I like that you feel bad about the term going ballistic and you talk about it on the podcast. Like for me,
that was actually right what I was going to say, believe it or not. I'm glad you listened because I was like, I should have called it going ballistic, but oh well.
Well, I think it's hilarious because for me, like I looked at it as a shooting term, right? I didn't even think of like you would be, on there ranting and raving and stuff like that. And I didn't notice it until you called it out in the actual podcast, which I thought was kind of funny.
Yeah, well, I can pick on myself. I thought it was a cute name, and so sometimes I catch myself trying to be too cute on something, and you know what? Probably just would have been easier to be the shooting show or the Ryan Kleckner pod, something, because it's morphed into, me and my friends or me and my cousin on there just kind of hanging out with the Kleckners talking about shooting, and I think the style that people have liked better has been just like they're hanging out in the garage with us talking about guns. A little weird for me, but I'll keep doing it.
Yeah, and I think that's what people identify with. Before we got going here, you mentioned that the podcast is an interesting medium because it's intimate, because you're in people's ears, literally in their earbuds, and they make that connection with you. So, I don't know about you, but I've done this for like 3 years, 200 and some podcasts, and I'll have people come up with me at the range, and they'll pick up a conversation where they left off when they got out of the truck to go to the match. So. It's
wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, it is kind of funny because like I don't have a context for it sometimes. Like I think I recorded that like 7 weeks ago, man. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, definitely. I think people feel they can get your personality better too. I mean, I know video is great. We're here on YouTube doing this, but yeah, there's just something about being part of someone's life, whether it's in their vehicle or mowing the lawn or they're working in the garage. that it's a great way for people to reach out and touch their customers too. I really encourage it for anyone. Podcasting is ironically the new medium, even though it's going backwards, kind of the old radio. So yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, it is. And, for me, like the morning zoo talk radio, I never really connected with very well. So like I eschewed that, but the long form, where you can get to know people and get to know their past, their present, where they come from and their opinions and stuff like that is something that I really enjoy.
Did you just say eschewed?
I think I did. Did I use it correctly?
That's you did. That's like a $1 word, man. One of my more popular phrases I like to say or to write on people's papers, because I teach also. I do like too many things, and every once in a while I'll write eschew obfuscation, which means avoid making things complicated, which is essentially what saying eschew obfuscation does.
Yeah, and I totally got that. That's hilarious. I'm going to be using that from now on. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Ryan, I want to tell you a quick story here. So I was on the way to a match, the Vortex Shooter Source 3-gun championships in Texas, just outside of Fort Worth, with a few buddies. And one of my friends, Josh Huff, said, well, I've been listening to this new podcast and you got to listen to it. And I was like, okay, well, what is it? Because I honestly listen to a lot of podcasts and I don't have time for a new one. But he said it's Going Ballistic with Ryan Kleckner. And I was like, God, Kleckner sounds familiar. I don't know why, but I'm pretty sure it sounds familiar. And I'll give it a chance. So when I got back, I wrote it down. When I got back to the house after the match and everything, I Googled your name and I realized, I've watched several YouTube videos. One where you were explaining MIL versus MOA. Several things you did with the NSSF, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's why I got it. And then as soon as I popped on the podcast, I heard your voice. I'm like, yeah, that's right, because you have a very
thanks, man.
You have a very distinctive voice. But again, I don't have time to consume a lot of podcast content. And after your first 2 episodes, I listened to the next 15. So I listened to like 17 episodes in a row. I started at the beginning and
wow, that's the best compliment someone could give. That's awesome, man. I appreciate it.
So, yeah, you're welcome. So for the audience listening, for the 3-Gun Show listeners, like this is why Ryan's on here, because the information is so incredible that Ryan puts out, and pumped to have you here on today, sharing it with the 3-Gun Show audience.
I hope what we do today when we get into stuff is, first off, thank you again. That's a great compliment. But second, I hope what you're getting that's valuable out of the information I try to share is that it's not that hard.
Yeah.
And I think there's so many people that just want to protect their part of the industry, their little niche, and be like, oh, I'm a long-range shooter, and it's super tough, and not everybody can do it, and therefore I'm cool. That's BS. It's not really that difficult. I mean, yeah, when we get to the extreme levels of it, maybe you need to start worrying about how the Earth is rotating. But I bet that you don't need to worry about it in 3-gun. Yeah. I bet you don't need to worry about it for the 99% of the long range shooting that's going on out there, even at distance. So it's like, instead of trying to impress each other with factoids and doing what I call playing stump the chump, and quizzing people on things and trying to one up someone else, is maybe we should open the sport up more and get people into the fundamentals of it and get people into enjoying it. And yeah, it's not that bad.
Yeah. And I think that's why I really connected with it, Ryan, is that, you put things in such a simple and easy to understand manner. You bring out like a complex concept, and then you break it down to where it makes it easy for like the layperson to understand, or beginner, intermediate, whatsoever. And so when you said on the podcast, oh, by the way, if you need legal help, contact me. I'm a lawyer as well. I was like, well, this isn't adding up. So let's take her back a little bit here and talk about your background, because you have, once I did a little bit of research, you have like a super interesting background that you kind of let fall out over the 25 or so first podcasts that you've done. But I think it's super interesting and something the audience can really connect with here.
Okay. Well, grew up, born and raised in Arizona, so spent a lot of time out hiking through, believe it or not, we have trees there in northern Arizona and mountains and hunting. And the best thing for me is elk hunting in northern Arizona with a bow. Even though I'm a gun guy, I love bow hunting. It's kind of what our family looked forward to. I had a great family out there. There's not many Kleckners. If there's a Kleckner, chances are I'm directly related to him. Left for the military. Never really expected to go into the military. It was just kind of one of those whim things I decided to do. and went with a contract to be able to try out to get into 1st Ranger Battalion, and ended up making it there after a series of schools and things you got to do, and had an amazing but tough time. I mean, I was by no means the best of really kind of anything. I was surrounded by just amazing guys. I was just lucky to be around, and I never had to try so hard to be mediocre. That's true. I mean, there were guys that you'd go running with in the morning that they would run their 10-miler in under an hour, right? So they would do sub 6-minute miles for 10 in a row.
Damn.
That's just what they did. And I'm 6'2" and 230, and I'm just not going to run that fast, right? So I had to train extra just to be in the middle of the pack, and I kind of like that, and I have no humility in admitting that. That's just how great a people it was to be so young and to be in a special operations community. That was actually one of the things they tried to get you to quit, by the way. The school you used to have to go through, or the process used to be called RIP, the Ranger Indoctrination Program, where you could only quit. You couldn't be failed out. So they just made it more and more miserable till enough people quit. And one of the speeches they gave us that was the closest to convincing me, I still didn't quit, but it was the closest to convincing me, was, why would you do this to yourself? Why not go to some other unit and be the stud? Why would you want to go somewhere where you have to fight to be in the middle of the pack?
Oh man, that's some mind trickery
that's a
there.
Good point. They're like, go somewhere else. You'll be the hero. You'll get promoted first. You'll get all the cool schools. You'll do this. And I'm like, man, that is some good mind trickery. But anyway, so I deployed to Afghanistan a couple times. Ended up making it over to the sniper section in the Ranger Battalion. Went to Afghanistan the first time at the end of 2001 as a sniper, as a shooter, and then the second deployment I went as a spotter, because the spotter is the senior guy on our teams. And shortly after that, Iraq was starting up, and I got out. I had my chance to get out and said, I'm leaving while the party's still fun. I went back to Phoenix, went to college.
Is that, I'm sorry to interrupt, is that first Iraq or second one there?
First, well, I guess the second one. So 2003.
Oh, 2003. Okay. I missed the date there.
So Afghanistan 2001, Afghanistan again 2002, and then right in Iraq was starting up 2003. I was like, I'm going back to college. Party's fun. Take care. I love the military. I'm a big believer that you should either make a career out of it or not. I think everyone should go do at least one enlistment. I think it's amazing. It's amazing for me. But once you're done with that first enlistment, you have a hard decision to make. I was not 4 years behind my peers. I was 4 years later than them starting college, but I was ahead of them in so many other ways because of the experiences the military gave me. But I just knew I didn't want to make it a career. So I went back to college. I taught at a community college out there, all the outdoor education classes like backpacking, rock climbing, land navigation. It was really fun. I also taught at a government contracted sniper school for a while out there. And then when I graduated with my bachelor's degree, I got bored again and wanted my next challenge in life. And again, on a whim, went to law school, moved across the country to Connecticut, went to law school.
Law school is like one of the most highly committed whims you could possibly do, right?
Yeah, I'd say second to going to a Ranger Battalion. But
yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So I did that one, and my wife, we just got married, and she's with me. She's like, you know what? Let's do it. Screw it. Let's go move across the country and do that. So we did that. And my first summer, I got an internship at the National Shooting Sports Foundation. They're the folks that run and operate the SHOT Show. They're the ones I did the videos with. And it was actually, we have a video studio there. And one of the guys came to me while I was working on government relations stuff, the legal stuff. He said, hey, you got a shooting background, right? You want to come do an explainer video? Sure. So I went down there. I did the video on how to mount your scope. And we never expected it would take off. But a couple million views later, we're like, okay, maybe we should do some more videos. Yeah. And we just started knocking out some more videos. I worked there for a couple of years and then ended up going to Remington, where I worked there out of the New York City office, believe it or not, out of Manhattan, and traveled all over the country as we acquired companies. And 4 and change years with Remington, ended up being a vice president at Remington Outdoor Company, over compliance and security and things like that. And then left Remington to hang out my own shingles and attorney in firearms compliance and laws. And I decided, you know what? I've always wanted to write a book. Even if only my mom and my best friend bought a copy, I think it'd be cool to say that I wrote a book. So the feedback from those NSSF videos, that first group of videos we did, was always what you said was, man, thanks for explaining it simply. Thanks for making it not, too hard to figure out and understand and opening this up. And I love it. I said, you know what? Maybe that's my brand. Maybe my brand is making it simple. So I decided to write a beginner's guide to long-range shooting. I call it the Long Range Shooting Handbook. It's just got a bright orange cover because I wanted people to take it to the range and find it in their range bag. I published that. It's been a little over 2 years now, so probably 28 months, something like that, 28 months ago now.
Mm-hmm.
And I cannot believe, not false humility, cannot believe how much it took off. It's sold 65,000 copies so far.
Damn.
It's still the number one bestseller in its category. So 2.5 years later, if you look on Amazon, it's still the number one shooting book for that long. It's just insane. I would have taken better pictures had I known. Every picture in that book was taken on my iPhone. I kid you not. I pulled my iPhone out of my pocket and took pictures of like a bullet, or took pictures of a bolt, or took pictures of positions with my iPhone. So every picture in the book was taken with an iPhone. Just wrote it myself, published it myself. I reached out to a couple publishers, and they're like, "No, we're not interested." And then like 2 months later, they all came running back. I'm like, "No, forget you. I published it myself. I like it now."
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I decided, well, writing and doing media and teaching and doing this stuff was way more fun than being a lawyer. So I'm just going to back off being a lawyer to very little. I run some online training courses like at Rocket FFL.
Mm-hmm.
I have a training course for people to get their federal firearms license to be a gun dealer or stuff like that. That has taken off more than I could expect. I've been very blessed. It's been nice to have that going. And then I just released a children's safety book last week called Firearm Safety is No Accident. So that's on Amazon now too and selling. That's really fun to do. That's not really a moneymaker. That's just I want to get that out there to make things safer.
Right.
And then I just started a company 6-7 months ago, another one, because I don't have enough to do, and I teach. So I teach constitutional law at the University of Alabama in Huntsville. I drive down there to do that. Semester's starting up again next week. I started a company called Mayday Safety, and it was because my neighbor and I were actually sitting around at night realizing, around the campfire, talking about how we have a problem with these either shootings or bombings or things that are going on, and people don't know how to handle the chaos and confusion.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about, I said, I figured out this kind of online training thing and a little bit of, SEO. So people are finding the site and taking the online training. So we need to do online training because there's no reason that the secretary at the front of an office building doesn't know how to use a tourniquet, because she's going to be the one saving a life with that tourniquet, not the AED, the external defibrillator on the wall.
Right.
That every office building has. That's not going to be helping anybody, and that's expensive. But a little cheap tourniquet that someone could, not with super proper training, just a little bit of training could use, will literally save lives before first responders get there. I said, you know what? We should do, safety training for organizations that's kind of like the military mindset to it. And then I as we're drinking whiskey and solving the world's problems, I brought up the idea of, well, then you could have an app, and then you could check in on who was safe and who wasn't, because then sometimes knowing who doesn't need help is just as important as knowing who does. And my neighbor went, that's it, the app, we should do it. And we, oh yeah, whatever. The next day, the Texas church shooting happened at the end of last year.
Mm-hmm.
He and I texted each other and said, were you serious? He's like, well, I don't know, were you serious? I said, I think I was serious, let's do this. And here we are today. I'm in my office now. We have a real company, and the Mayday Safety app is out there in iTunes. We just got done beta testing the Android version, so it'll be out in a couple of days. And schools and businesses are just signing up everywhere, and it has turned in 7 months now into this essentially a Blue Force tracker from the military, where schools and businesses can see this really cool aerial view of their facility. And then if there's an emergency, they can see exactly where the person is, and then they can see who checks in safe, so teachers can lock down, and first responders can know which classrooms to go to, and they can communicate. And it just took off on us, man.
Wow. Okay. So that, you said a lot right there. I don't think you took a breath, but that,
sorry, man.
No, I'm totally teasing. That Mayday Safety app, that is an incredible idea. When you said like the Blue Force tracker, like that makes a ton of sense, especially when you're talking about like, hundreds of students, dozens of teachers in a place, or like in an office building.
Yeah, so you can't see it very well in the camera maybe, but there it is for people that are watching live. It's just a smartphone app that anyone can hit and trigger, even the black. See how we did a black background to it? It's actually a very lightly faded map. You can see the Google map back there. You can add your family in there. See, there's a bunch of family members, and I can check if they're safe. So right now to my wife, I can just send her a safety check, and no matter where she's at in her phone, this notification pops up, hey, are you safe? she can say yes or no, and I can get the feedback right away. And it works worldwide. So I had this in South Africa 2 weeks ago. We've had people in Jordan testing it. And just for fun, they'll be standing on a street corner in Jordan and be like, all right, Ryan, I'm going to fire one off. And they hit the Mayday button. And right on my screen is exactly where they're standing. And it's blowing people's minds because they realize that they'd have no other recourse in Jordan. There's no 911.
Right.
Who would they call? How would they even pronounce the street name that they're on to try and describe where they're at? So it's really turned into something bigger than we ever expected, and we're happy. Man,
honestly, I did not know that you were doing that, but that is like one of the coolest things I've heard of in recent times. What an intelligent app.
The black screen I mentioned. It's because some other software solutions are kind of similar, but do stuff different. They have white screens, and it takes the military. So you know who Kyle Lamb is of Viking Tactics? Yes. He and I are doing this together.
Oh, cool.
So this is Kyle Lamb, me, and our business partner. It's the three of us. We're like, no, we need a black screen because you don't want someone hiding in the dark and illuminating their face.
Yeah, exactly.
Just simple things like that we're hoping that the special operations experience changes for schools.
Huh. Okay. Well, so that's cool. It's bringing like the, several experiences that you have in your lifetime and applying them to something that's like, super important to, not only the country, but yourself as well, because you're a father, right?
Exactly right. And that's why I did the Firearm Safety book too. Both of these are because of my kids. Is my daughter came home from school rattling off pool safety and fire safety. And that's when it hit me. They'll refuse to talk about firearms in school.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So let's fix that. Let's make a firearm safety book. And then we're thinking about the kids at school. I'm like, they don't know what they're doing. It takes 20 minutes for the first responders to get there. What's going on in those 20 minutes? In Parkland, they had no idea whether to get in the classroom or out of the classroom, no way to get the message out to people, no way to get feedback, back upstream. So Parkland happened while we were making this, and it actually is a weird feeling to not only be punched in the gut to know that Parkland happened, but to be punched in the gut that knowing that you have a tool that can maybe save lives and you're not done yet.
Yeah.
So it's changed it to now I hear of a school shooting, and it's like, oh, I was so close to being done, or how come you guys didn't use this yet?
Huh.
So we hope it helps.
So what is the what? I'm sorry, I'm really interested by this. I promise for the audience we'll talk about firearms in a minute here, but what is
for everyone for firearms? The reason you should like Mayday is one, it's free for families and everybody around the world. Mm-hmm. The other reason you should like it is everyone wants to have the debate about guns, which I think we should have. But I'm tired of people saying, no, don't ban guns, it'll do nothing to help, and then not saying what will.
Yeah.
This is a chance for you to have the debate about guns and going, you know what might help? Here. So instead of just saying no to everything, here's something to say yes to. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, so that actually answered the question I had is like, what's your strategy for spreading this app to, to businesses, to schools and stuff like that? Because like you said, I think people are willing to talk about tornado drills, earthquake drills, fire drills, Tyrannosaurus drills, but they don't want to talk about, an active shooter sort of thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, one is the fact we don't know if this is right or not. I've never done software before. I jumped feet first into a software company, and our plan is that if we give it for free to everybody so they can use it for their families, so that if your wife is across the country and she has an alert, she hits the button that right on your phone, you see an exact pin of where she's standing at and where she needs help, that people are going to go, all right, there's some utility there. Or heaven forbid a mass shooting happens at a shopping mall and you're at the other end of the mall and you get the alert that something's happening nearby. We're hoping that will get people excited enough and save enough lives that they will then push it up to their businesses and their churches and their schools. And now the businesses and churches and schools pay for it. And that's how we're hoping to monetize it. So it's the balance of we hope it goes viral, but not so viral that it makes us go broke before businesses, enough of them pay for it. Schools we're doing as cheap as we can get. It's $1,000 for the year. And the school's covered for all the parents and students and everything like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's like dirt cheap for the value there.
Yeah, everyone tells us we should charge more. And we're like, you know what? I'll charge a business more.
Yeah.
But I can't say I'm in it to keep kids safe if I'm more worried about the profit for the schools.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm totally contacting my family after this and making them all get the app. Man. I think that's an awesome idea. I love it. So Ryan, that's not even something I knew that you were doing, but the let's talk about the children's book that you just launched.
Sure.
Here. Sure. So obviously there's a hole in the market. Like you said, we teach about fire safety and pool safety, but not firearm safety. So how do you write to that age group? Is it difficult?
I have no idea. Very difficult. It's embarrassing too, because it's a little vulnerable in a weird way.
Yeah.
I write the handbook. I could throw it down on the table and be like, "That's the truth." You could not agree with it. You could call me stupid, but you're not going to dissuade me. I know what I wrote in there is what I believe. Writing fiction's a little harder. One quick point. I'm sorry to do this, but I want to do a tie from Mayday to the gap in there.
Sure.
How to sell it on businesses was what you asked about. Mass shootings. This is actually easier to sell because of the fire alarms, because of things like that. Is businesses were teaching us. You go to a 2,000 employee business, and they say, "Do you know how long it takes for us to make sure that everyone's out of the building during a fire alarm?"
Yeah.
And so we could just have everyone. You could just send out a message saying, "Are you in the parking lot? Yes or no?" And they see the entire screen just all turn green lights, and they only need to go look for Mary Jane, who's stuck in the building. That's blowing their minds. And we're like, yeah, but it's great for active shooters, and they're just. Sure, great, Ryan.
Yeah.
We just like it for communication. But anyway, so the gap in the market for the safety.
Hang on real quick. I want to follow up with that one. So I
right.
used to work at a large aerospace company, and we had, fire drills. We all had to meet in the parking lot. And so we stand there and watch the thing burn with all these chemicals and stuff inside and huffing the air, right? So we always thought that was dumb. And then anytime the fire alarm went off, we'd jump in the car and we'd go get breakfast. So
yeah, why not?
Yeah, but now we're 3 missing people. Right. So, so that's
so if that company uses Mayday, you check in safe and bolt, and now they have a green dot next to you. You're good to go.
They're over getting breakfast
burritos.
burritos. They're totally fine.
Yeah. So the problem with the book is I wanted to do firearm safety, and my first chapter of the Long Range Shooting Handbook is called Firearm Safety. And that's all it does is just talk about the 4 basic rules. I even say, if you don't agree with these, no problem. Just give the book to somebody else.
That's great.
So the problem with kids' firearm safety is my kids know when they're being sold to. So when you read a kid a book and it's got an obvious agenda, it's obvious to the kid.
Yeah.
They get it too. And who dictates what titles or what books to read to my kids is my kids. I mean, of course, I can force them to sit down and read a book. I'm in charge. But when I want to read them a bedtime story, I want to ask them, what story do you want to hear? So I thought, how do I get the firearm safety message to kids where I sneak it in at the end? That was one. And the other is, how do I appeal to the non-gun community? So
That's
I think people that are right. So people that are the least informed about guns, I think, are the most unsafe. I don't know if that's true. Maybe the people that think they know about guns but don't might be more unsafe. But anyway, they need to hear this message too. So I didn't want to make it Timmy the AR-15 teaches about gun safety. That's not right. That's not going to appeal to anybody, or it's not going to help, I don't think. So instead, I wrote a really cheesy parent to kid I love yous on like every page. And I have a couple of kids that share stories of how they've had accidents in their lives. One of them, they spilled the flour. One of them bent a nail helping build the doghouse. And the message in each little scenario from the parent is always, "Oh, it's okay. Accidents happen, but don't worry. I still love you." And at the end of the book, Grandpa, I even made it Grandpa leaves a gun out because I wanted these anti-gun families to think, well, what if I don't have guns in my home?
Right. Yeah.
So the kids at Grandpa's house sees the gun laying out and runs over to play with it. And then Grandpa flips out on him. And the kid says, well, wait a minute. How come you freaked out so much about the gun, but not about the other accident? And the message is, things can break and bend and things can be mended, but you're not a thing. An accident happening with you is you can't fix that. And so, yeah, I hope it works, but it's a little weird to write, "I love you" on every page and put your name on the book.
Yeah, especially
not ready to be laughed at. Yeah,
especially from like our industry, right, where we like to say we have a ton of Type A personalities. I like to joke that A stands for a-hole sometimes, but the the other thing is like you're Ranger, combat veteran, so you've got a little bit of an image to uphold here, and when you go writing kids books, maybe that loses a little street cred. What do you think?
Yeah, maybe. Bring it. I'll happily lose street cred to have parents. Because the book's really for parents, by the way. I mean, I make it a kid's book, but the kids aren't the ones that really need the gun safety message. It's the parents that are in charge of leaving the gun out or not. Or saying, I even put a message in the back to parents. Essentially admonish people that give the excuse, "Oh, don't worry, it's unloaded," or things like that. No, there's no excuse. I think a firearm should be under an adult's direct control. or locked away from kids. I think those are the only two options if you got kids around. But
well, it's a great message that that you're putting out there, and something useful that people can actually use and then learn from it in entertaining ways. So it's great, man.
Thanks, man.
One thing that I've noticed, Ryan, is that I don't personally have kids. I've got two nephews that teenager and almost teenager right now. One is just nuts about guns and watches everything on YouTube. I keep trying to steer him to your channel, but you don't blow enough shit up for him to be interested.
Yeah, my videos probably aren't that exciting for
teenagers.
Kids.
Yeah,
I've one cool one, shooting the Barrett standing. That's a cool video.
Yeah, that's a cool video. All right, I'll send him that one next. But anyway, so the point I'm trying to make is that in 3-gun we have a lot of junior shooters, and I wouldn't say a lot proportionally, but definitely more than you would expect, right? And I find that the maturity of the young people that I shoot with at these matches is way higher than someone else that I would encounter in a normal way. And I think that it's because the responsibility that we place upon them by being responsible for something very dangerous if used incorrectly.
Mm-hmm. I think you're right. I've met countless kids out at 3-gun matches and think to myself, wow, what a great American.
Those seriously.
Kids being raised right. Yeah, you can't have a kid that most kids that are bad are kids that don't listen.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And if they don't listen, they can't be out of the 3-gun match. So I think it's a self-selecting population, but I agree with you.
That does make sense too. Maybe they started out at a higher level and they're only going higher because of the additional responsibilities they're given. Yeah.
I mean, like I said, most kids that you'd look at a kid and you think, well, that kid's misbehaving. They're usually misbehaving and not listening to instructions somehow from the parent or something else. So anyway, I love it. I think more kids should get into shooting. I think 3-gun's such a fun way for them to do it because it's so fun of an environment. Every match is fun, and it's very rare to find the a-hole out there. There are some, but most people are happy to let you try their equipment or help you with stages or things like that. And, you could have the kid out being active doing a sport and the parent just sitting there the entire time, or vice versa. Or you can have a sport where you can walk around and do it together. I think it's great.
Yeah, and I've seen it all different ways too. And, especially in the last couple months here in some of the matches I've traveled to, I've seen the parents out supporting the junior I don't shoot, but my child does. And so I'm here supporting them. I've seen the juniors out, kicking sand and kicking rocks while dad's shooting, and then the combinations too. So it's cool that, any way you guys want to do it, it's welcome in the sport.
Agreed.
So Ryan, let's switch books here. Long Range Shooting Handbook.
All right.
The content that we get on the podcast, a lot of times you're like, okay, well, this is in chapter so and so of the book, so go refer back to that. Can I listen to all 54 episodes or whatever it is of your podcast and get the whole gist, or do I need to buy the book and learn along there as well?
You can get the gist. That's how much I'm not trying to sell things above anything else.
Sure.
You could definitely get the gist. The reason the book it was formatted the way it is, it's meant to be a reference manual.
Okay.
So
I like that.
I think you could finish the book faster than you could listen to all my podcasts. Right?
I gotcha. Yeah.
You couldn't listen to all my podcasts in one day, and you could finish the book in a day if you really wanted to sit down and tear through it. It's a substantial enough book, but you get my point. The other thing is I break the book down into what it is, how it works, and how to use it. So I spend the whole first third of the book just the real basics. And I know a lot of people out there think that they're too cool for that. Mm-hmm. But go look at some of the reviews. Go look at some of the people that have endorsed it. Most of the comments they'll say are, Kyle, I was on Kyle's podcast, and he said there's only one thing you got to change out of this book, Ryan. You got to take the word beginner off of it. Because he admitted to learning stuff in there. He fully on his podcast was like, hey, I thought this was the truth, and you said the other way, and I had to go look it up. And he's like, you're right. That's so cool. Is if people leave their ego at the door and are willing to read a book that has the word beginner on it, even in the beginning when it's like, here's what an ogive is, here's what a cannula is, this is what it does, here's this part of the cartridge. Maybe that's boring to you. Maybe you already know that, but I can't know what all my readers know. So I want to get everyone on the same platform before we get into the middle section of the book, which is how it works. Okay, now we're going to talk about what a minute of angle is, but not a Wikipedia article on what a minute of angle is, more of a how to use it in the real world. Here's the tips and tricks I use. Here's the difference between a meter and a yard, and here's my mnemonic for remembering the difference of which number, is going to be bigger than the other number. Well, meters are bigger, but the number of meters to a target is going to be smaller because there's fewer of the bigger ones. Well, that can confuse people. So I say, well, here's how you can really think about it and really know it. Or you could ignore all that and just use this little mnemonic trick, which is I look at the alphabet and M is in the middle of the alphabet and Y is at the ends for meters to yards.
Right.
If I want to go from meters to yards, I have to go up. So the number's going to have to get bigger. I go up 10%. If I'm going from yards to meters, I'm going down the alphabet. I subtract 10% and forget everything else if that's what you want. But that's just, so the book does things like that, and it breaks it down into sections by numbers. So you can go to the table of contents and jump straight to yard meter conversions if you want, which you can't do with the podcast.
That's a good point. So one of the things I think you do well, and we've said it here, is that you put things in terms people can understand. So there's a thing called the curse of knowledge where you think like, oh, I know this, everyone must know this. How do you get over that and explain things well? Like, is this something you've done since you were young, or is it the military training? Is it the lawyering, the teaching? What is it? You seem to have like a natural gift for it.
I appreciate that. I have no idea. I don't know if it's the teaching, because I do love teaching. I'm a big believer that a good teacher is better than a good shooter.
Mm-hmm.
So having someone up there that is an amazing shooter but doesn't know how to teach isn't going to make you better. But I do believe I can take someone who's really good at teaching and I can teach them the basics of shooting, and I think they'd be a better shooting coach. Just because there's an art to teaching that can be learned. It's not something you have or you don't. You can learn it. And I'm not saying I even have it, but some people think it can be condescending. Because I'm like, well, for a minute of angle, I love to explain it with laser pointers. You've heard me in the video or in the book.
Yeah,
I'm like, hey, stop thinking of minute of angle as a size. Minute of angle is an angle, so is a mil, but it's an angular measurement. What I mean is the same as saying 20 degrees. You don't ask me how many inches is 20 degrees. That's impossible to answer, right? You realize I'm talking about an angle. So I get people thinking about the angle first. And I say, picture I had two laser pointers and I spread them apart 1 minute of angle. Now let's follow those dots as we go down range. At 100 yards, those dots are going to be about an inch apart. Well, what's going to happen at 200 yards? Well, you could visualize that they're going to be further apart. Yeah, it's going to be about 2 inches apart, but it's the same 1 minute of angle. Mm-hmm. And so I break that down, and most people love that. And that's, I think, what you're referring to is those type of analogies to help people picture those things.
Yeah.
But then some other people are like, you don't got to talk to me like I'm a kid. Well, I'm not trying. I don't assume that you need to know this, but I guess, maybe not being afraid to start at the basics.
Yeah, well, and I think a lot of that comes from ego, right? And our industry, our sport, our culture is, for better or worse, very ego-driven, and
it is.
A lot of people have invested a lot of their self-worth in being a good shooter. So they, even if they have like a kind of a general understanding of MOA, what a minute of angle actually is, they're not willing to listen to the full explanation and how you break it down, because that means like, well, if I listen to this, then that means I don't know it, so
right. Or worrying about what matters. Like minute of angle matters if you're going to use minutes of angle. It matters if you really understand it, so you can actually use it while you're shooting. What twist rate your barrel is does not matter. I know I just made a few people screech listening to the podcast. Yeah. It doesn't matter what twist rate your barrel is. When you're shooting, guns in your hand, you have a 1 in 12 twist barrel or a 1 in 10 twist barrel for .308. It's not something you can change. It's not something you can control. The rifle's already in your hands. So, and when you shoot the 500-yard target with that .308, you know that you need to come up 12 minutes of angle. So next time you go shoot a 500-yard target, you come up 12 minutes of angle. Does it matter if your barrel twist is different? No, it doesn't matter. I mean, maybe it mattered at the beginning when you had to figure out what you and that rifle had to do. But once you figured out what you and that rifle have to do at that distance, stop freaking out about that stuff. Stop worrying about that stuff. And instead, think about minutes of angle or mils in chunks like I teach people to do. So this will apply to 3-gun shooting, is you need to start thinking not about the Wikipedia answer of what a minute of angle is, but realize that that angle does translate into a certain size, what I call a chunk at a certain distance. So if I were starting fresh, I would without a doubt start with mils.
I'm glad you went there. Can you tell me why?
Long. It's simpler. It's harder for people like me because I started with minutes. But
everyone wants to put minutes into inches, right?
Well, because it's close to inches. That's why.
Right. But I think that's where it comes from. And, maybe like, grandpa told you like, okay, well, this is one MOA because there's an inch grid on a target. Like maybe that's what it is. But so give me a little bit more on why mil.
But it's only because it's easy for the conversions. It's just minutes of angle isn't precise. I don't care that it's really not precise, and I'm the most imprecise precision shooter there is. I'm a big believer in good enough is good enough. Like I don't sit there with a wind meter in my hand when I'm shooting. I don't, because I don't think the wind at me matters that much. I think the wind down range matters more. I even joke that if you're ever in some Hollywood sniper counter sniper scenario, which I'm never going to be in, but if I was someday, I hope the other guy is pulling out a wind meter because I'm going to shoot him through his wind meter. I'm going to shoot and I'm going to miss left by 2 feet. I'm going to reload, adjust 2 feet to the right, and shoot again. And
while
within
he's
3
reading his
seconds,
wind
I'm going to have a hit while he's doing a calculation. So I'm a big believer in good enough's good enough. But mils, well, first, the most important thing is not minutes or mils. It's having turrets and a reticle that match. I think that's most important. Whichever one you're going to do, make sure your turrets and reticle match, which we didn't have in the military way back when. So at least as long as they match, that makes sense. And another piece of advice is use whatever your buddies use. So if your guys that you go shooting with are all mil guys, get mils, or vice versa. If they're minutes guys, even though I just said that mils is probably a better system, don't do it because you're going to be constantly converting with you and your buddies. I'd rather have my buddies spotting for me and talking the same language. So no, mils is just it. There's no conversion needed at all. It works versus minutes of angle. You got to keep going back and forth, and it's a mess.
Right. I got it. Okay. So, that totally identifies with what I've chosen too. So that's probably why I like it, cause that's how humans are. Right. But as far as like good enough, and it's something that I've used like way back in my drag racing days. We'd always say, good enough, and then we'd move on. And I think that fits my personality well. Can you be like good enough in precision shooting? Because
absolutely,
precision's right in the name.
I can
Ryan.
make you better if you let go of all the precision.
Why is that?
So one is this is kind of a life lesson too, I guess, is focusing on what you can control. Okay. Getting let's say you put a wind meter every 50 yards all the way to the target, and had the wind meters at the height the bullet was actually going to travel, and had them all plugged into a supercomputer that could do all the ballistic calculations of knowing the wind at every distance. And you had the most precision turned, bullets with the exact ballistic coefficient, and everything is the best can be, which by the way has never existed. Anyone with this entire perfectly set up. As long as you're still involved, you're going to jerk the trigger possibly. Okay. Well, let's say you even made a perfect shot. Okay. And we're going to shoot at a target where it takes a couple seconds for the bullet to get to the target. The most perfect calculation is irrelevant 3 seconds later when the wind changes. So even if you sat there and got everything perfect, as soon as you launch that bullet and the bullet leaves the barrel, the wind could die. Right? You're still going to miss then if the wind changes or gusts, even the bullet goes there. So my theory is not to say that we should just give up and not try at all. My theory is, you can get out and shoot one round every 5 minutes because you're sitting there trying to calculate the spin of the earth. Or you can shoot more and get more practice not worrying about the spin of the earth and just getting good enough and having fun shooting. The other people are too precise in is they try so hard that they end up missing. So this is a 3-gun tip for you. Long range shooting, by the way, I don't think the principles apply necessarily only when you're shooting long distance. The bullet doesn't know when it leaves your rifle if it's going to travel 10 yards or 1,000 yards.
Oh, that's a good point.
I also don't pull the trigger differently. I don't say, I'm shooting at 1,000 yards. I'm going to use the 1,000-yard trigger technique. I use the same technique at 100 yards as I do at 1,000. Yep. I get just as stable when I'm shooting a group at 100 versus I'm shooting at 1,000. So nothing changes, which is why I don't even think the shooter needs to know the distance they're shooting. The spotter can give them the elevation and just shoot the target. That's also why the shooter is the junior guy on a sniper team. Because once you learn how to pull the trigger, you do it the same every single time. Same cheek weld, same focus on the reticle, same steady pressure on the trigger, same stable platform. I could lie to you and tell you the distance. As long as I put the right dope on your scope, you're going to hit. It is irrelevant whether you knew it was actually 600 or 800 yards, right? So the problem that shooters have by trying to be too precise is they try too hard. And in 3-gun, this happens because you're unstable. And I make the analogy that it doesn't matter the distance you're shooting. So this principle applies in 3-gun at a 150-yard target or a 200-yard target just as well. Is I know the monologue that goes through your head, Dave, and everyone else listening. You pick up your rifle when you're unstable, and you put the reticle on the target, and you go, no, a little left, a little higher, a little bit, no, a little lower, higher, right about now.
Yep.
You guys do that, right?
Hell
Okay,
yeah,
I do that too. Okay, that's why you're missing.
Then I smack the crap out of the trigger.
Correct. Or you smack the crap out of the trigger because you're rushing the shot, or you're forgetting about everything else because you're so worried about that. You also get too high a magnification on your scope because you think that's going to make you more accurate, and you magnify your errors, and you end up focusing on the target. That's my biggest pet peeve with high magnification. Is people need to focus on their reticle. That's what they can control. There's that life lesson. Focus on what you can control. Focus on the reticle. You get a big, pretty image of a target. You want to now stare and peek at that big, pretty target. And when you're trying to go through the internal monologue of where it's going to be, you end up focusing so intently on the target that you can actually lose track of where the reticle is, and therefore make a bad shot. So what I would do with students is we do this drill, we call it the LAPD drill after the North Hollywood shootout, is I would put a face target at 100 yards and ask them to shoot 6 rounds at the target. These are military law enforcement snipers. 2 from the kneeling, 2 from the seated, 2 from the prone without bipods. So all semi-unsupported, sling-supported positions. You would have snipers from amazing units with amazing pedigrees, with incredible rifles and experience, fail at this drill. I'd give them 60 seconds for 6 shots. They had to transition and shoot. And they would have 2 out of 6 shots on the face. And I'd go down and they'd all be discouraged. And just because I might be the a-hole in type A sometimes, I'd pull out a Romanian Wasser 10 out of my truck, and I would do the drill with the Wasser 10 and get 6 out of 6.
Huh.
Go, all right, guys, Wasser 10, iron sights, Russian ammo, what's the difference here? I only need to shoot 6 minutes of angle. If you're using my head, 8 minutes of angle, right? So whatever you need to do, what's the problem here? Well, the problem isn't the rifle or the dope, it's you. And I would talk about the biggest thing I would want to leave you all with. And this is an acceptable amount of accuracy. So stop trying to be too precise and figure out what's acceptable. Well, at that distance, 6 minutes of angle is acceptable. So stop trying to make a 1 minute of angle shot. Instead, allow the reticle to move within the 6 minutes of angle. And as it's moving around, start applying steady pressure to the trigger. And when the gun goes off, even if the reticle's at the very edge of the target, that's a hit. You just defined that the target was anywhere within the 6-inch circle. So if you defined that, accept that. And take that hit at the edge, then try a shot again, let the reticle move, apply pressure, keep focusing on the reticle. I don't care if the reticle is down at the bottom corner when the gun goes off. That's a hit right in the bottom corner. That's called an acceptable amount of accuracy. The problem is if you try and be too much into the center, you do that monologue, you're moving, you get it dead centered, and then you jerk the rifle completely off the target. And by trying to be too precise, you ended up missing. So on 3-gun, when it's unsupported, when you're breathing heavy, when you're moving, allow that reticle to move and go back to shooting a group. Go back to thinking pressure, 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 bang. That slow of a shot and a hit is way better than picking it up and trying to choose to make it go off.
Right. And then, having 5 or 6 makeup shots, and you could have just used that time to get one good shot.
Correct. So, or you had the scope magnification backed off enough that you weren't worrying about the target too much. You weren't trying to be too quote unquote precise, that you see where the impact was and you can adjust from it.
Magnification is something interesting. So when I started shooting 3-gun, I had like an aim point. I forgot what the heck the model was, but it was the 4 MOA dot, and that's basically all I shot because in Colorado, our matches went out to 200 yards. I recall having a friend that had like a Burris MTAC 1-4, which was like the scope to have at the time, and I remember that 4 power was like incredible. And now I shoot a Vortex Razor 1-6, and it's like, oh, this is amazing.
Yeah.
But so many times I see a lot of people talking on like 3-gun Facebook groups, like, oh, when are they going to have a 1-8? When is there going to be a 1-10? This and that. And people are like, oh, I like the Razor. Wish I had more magnification. And I've found in just my, some brief experiences, nothing compared to what you have, that exactly what you said, that the chasing the magnification is like a fool's errand, because like you said, you do become too precise. If you can zoom in on, say, like a BC zone that you're shooting at like 450 yards and you can see where the bolt is, you're going to aim for the bolt that's holding it on the target rather than just like an acceptable hit on that target.
Or you're going to freak out about it really does just magnify your errors. You're going to freak out about all the moving that's going on. You're going to try too hard to rush the shot. You need enough magnification to see the target. That's it. So you define the target. If your target is the entire silhouette, anywhere on an E-type silhouette or a IPSC silhouette, then you should have enough magnification to see the silhouette. That's it.
Right.
I mean, if you decided that your target is the A zone, okay, now you need enough magnification to see the A zone because you're the one that picked your target. But anything more than that is actually going to be detrimental. I will see over and over, even just shooting groups at 100 yards, people having trouble shooting groups that I'll walk up to and grab their magnification and crank it down. You know, like the old Leupold Mark IV from 3.5 to 10 power. Crank it down to 3.5 power and say, shoot another group. I can barely see the target. I know, shoot another group. It's almost always a better group at 3.5 power versus 10. And it happens all the time. It's the same, the old NRA trick for pistol shooters. When people are having trouble with a handgun hitting the bullseye, they flip the card around to the white side, and most people get a better group.
Oh, no
without
kidding.
the target at all. Try it. Take a piece of paper with a handgun, flip it around. You end up with a better group because you're not focusing on the target. You're just focusing on your iron sights and what matters. Same thing happens with magnification. So I power it down. I was shooting some stupid groups the other day with same thing with the 1 to 6, just having fun at distances. People are like, oh, BS. That was only 6 power. I'm like, guys, people that can shoot a lot better than any of us were doing longer distances with iron sights.
Yeah.
So how is that possible? Well, it's because it's only the fundamentals that matter. As long as you can see the target, you'll be fine.
Yeah, and I spent, I think, 3 months shooting a 1X optic in competitions in preparation for the Colorado State Championship, and I found that, you know, not caring as much about how much fidelity I had on the target actually made it much faster. And then when you realize like your rifle is moving just the same as it would if you had a 6-power scope on there, although now you're seeing less movement and you're carrying less. Once you have that realization, it kind of helps you shoot long range with actual magnification after that.
Well, have you ever had trouble finding a target in a 3-gun match?
Oh yeah, you do the prairie dog
pop. Have to go up in magnification to find it or down to find it?
Down.
Yeah, there you go. So why are you going high in the first place?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So everyone out there, I don't like shooting groups. I'm not the best group shooter out there anyway. I like more realistic tactical shooting like you would do in a 3-gun match. But if you are shooting a group and you're not happy with your performance, cut the power in half, see what happens.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, so let's talk about like since you're into the tactical practical applications, let's talk about it like practical application. So for this last weekend, I was at the Wyoming Governor's match, and we had targets out to 530 yards. I don't know if you knew this, but on the plains of Wyoming, it's kind of windy, so and rolling hills, and so you're looking at a wide array of say 5 or 6 targets. There's different wind for each of them. The wind calls become important. Obviously ballistics, you're shooting uphill, stuff like that. If I'm shooting, say, like a 77 grain, 75 grain, 69 grain, 223 out of a AR-15, how do I approach that stage and take in all the data before that buzzer goes off that I need for success?
Wow, that's a whole podcast right there.
Yeah.
If we're talking just wind, which I think we should for the beginning, because I have to assume from a starting point that the shooter knows what they're doing. They know the dope for their gun. They know how to shoot. If you don't, stop going and trying to figure out wind.
Okay.
Right? So the Coriolis effect, what I talked about, the spin of the earth, it does matter. It does affect the bullet. Unless you can, however, shoot a 10-inch group repeatedly at 1,000 yards, stop worrying about it because it's such a minuscule amount. So same thing with wind. Wind is... So the biggest variable on your bullet that's going to affect the path of your bullet is gravity. Mm-hmm. The good news is it's the easiest to account for. It's the second biggest variable. Usually, it does change technically, but it's mostly the same around wherever you're shooting.
Yep.
The second biggest variable is wind. And the bad news is it's the hardest to account for because even if you do figure it out, like I said, it changes. So yes, wind's important, but until you can master you and your gun, let's not throw too many variables at it. Stay at the range and shoot at 100 and 200 yards and get good at groups, even with positional shooting. That's another thing, by the way. Get your ass off the bench. Shoot a group and then shoot off barricades, then shoot standing. You should be able to hit these smaller targets at these standing and unsupported positions, especially doing a bunch of jumping jacks first and picking up your rifle and trying to do it.
Yeah, because they usually don't give us benches to shoot from in 3-gun or precision shooting.
Say that again?
They usually don't give us benches to shoot from in precision shooting or in
so I tell hunters all the time, take a paper plate, put it at whatever distance you want to get good at. Take a paper plate and put it at 200 or 300 yards and stand there and keep shooting your hunting rifle so you can hit the paper plate every time. Because you need to be able to hit a kill zone standing. And then if you really want to get good, like I said, do jumping jacks or get your heart rate up and try and do it. Because I've never found a shooting bench out in the field.
Yeah, that's true.
Same thing. So that's the kind of shooting you need to get good at. The bench is there to get a good group. But master that first. So all this wind talk we're about to get into, ignore. Come back to this podcast after you can shoot like that 6-inch target. 6 minutes of angle, guys. That's horrible accuracy. But come back after you can hit a 6 minute of angle target at 100 yards. So a 6-inch target after doing jumping jacks, after running a sprint around the range and coming back and picking up the rifle and standing. Master that first, okay? Then we'll add the stuff on later. So now once you've done that, and we're going to talk about wind, you're shooting a 223, which means the wind's going to blow your bullet all over the place. It's just going to happen. Heavier bullet's probably going to be better for you. Speed isn't everything. Faster bullet is not more accurate. I think that's a big misnomer people have. But what a faster bullet does get you is it gets you less effect by the wind and gravity. Now, don't mistake that. That's not because the bullet has some sort of momentum that somehow resists the wind or gravity. I think a lot of people think that. Right. That if it's going so fast horizontally that somehow gravity can't touch it.
It's less time touched by gravity, right?
100% time. Yep.
Okay.
Every object falls at the same speed, right? You drop a bullet next to the barrel of a perfectly level gun and shoot a bullet at the exact same time, they both will hit the ground at the same time. The one you shot is just going to hit the ground way further away from you because the sideways speed has nothing to do with the downward speed of gravity. So it's all about the time, right? So a faster bullet gets to the target faster. So if it takes 2 seconds for whatever bullet you were shooting to get to the target, it's going to fall as far as that object would fall in 2 seconds. And it's going to blow as far as an object would blow when it's exposed to 2 seconds of wind. I almost analogize that to taking an air compressor nozzle and following along with the bullet and spraying the bullet for 2 seconds, how much it's going to blow it off course. Well, you get a bullet that's twice as fast, and now it gets to the target in 1 second. Well, it's going to fall less because it has less time to fall.
Right.
And it's going to be deviated by the wind less because you only get a 1 second blast from the air nozzle versus a 2 second blast. So that's where a fast bullet can help you with the wind. However, with 223, even though it's a pretty quick bullet, it's also light. So now you only have a 1 second blast with the air nozzle, but you're blowing a ping pong ball, something really light, so it's easily moved by the wind, right? So you have all these variables that all play into it, which is why there's no perfect anything. I would be doing the best I could to confirm the distance before I got to the stage. I'd like to have my own laser rangefinder or my own way to confirm or believe the distances are actually what they're saying they are, because you'd be surprised sometimes.
Oh, man.
And then,
so sorry to interrupt you there. My hard and fast rule is never, ever accept a distance call from a stage brief or an RO. And even if you know that RO's first name, always confirm it yourself, because I've been burned by that one several times.
Yeah, so bring your own laser rangefinder. And then I would spend the rest of the time that you had watching the wind. So, I mean, even during the stage brief, as you're listening, if they don't care that you have a pair of binoculars up to your face while you're listening to the stage brief, you should just be watching the wind and going, what's that doing? Yeah, it's going left to right out there, but the mirage, the heat waves aren't moving very much, but they're picking up between the further targets. That's interesting. And just keep watching. Ooh, look at that. The wind's gusting a little bit. Oh, there's a flag down there, or there's a tree. Oh, wow, that tree is moving the same direction the wind is. Oh, and the wind changed, and so did the tree. Aha, there's my identifier. All right, I want to watch that tree for that target. What's going on with that wind? Ooh, the dirt's just constantly be asking yourself. And what you do is you get a feel. Wind is a flow thing. It's like fluid. You start to watch it, you get a picture of what's going on, and just keep watching. I mean, in SODIC, the sniper school I went to in the military, you would have some of your tests. They'd have the instructors back there with these giant Swarovski spotting scopes as the instructors, and they would challenge you on the unknown distance range to get certain hits in certain distances. And the spotter would come back to the instructor, and the instructor would move the spotting scope and go, that target right there. And you'd look through the spotting scope to see the target they're talking about, and they would give you like 30 seconds to get a certain number of hits on the target. So you had to run up to your shooter, talk your shooter onto the target, figure out the distance, to get the right elevations, get the wind call, and engage the target. Well, one of the mottos I had from the military was, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. And if you get caught cheating, you're not trying hard enough. So we would go to the instructor's spotting scope. He's like, that target right there, you see it? Well, I'd look in this giant, like 110 millimeter Swarovski spotting scope, which is amazing for seeing the wind, and just do nothing but look at the wind. Looks a little left to right, a little angle. Hey, Kleckner, you see the target? No, Sergeant. No, looking for the target still. Yeah, okay, the wind's doing. I would spend the entire time getting a wind call. Because that was the most important thing.
Right.
You should be doing that before the stage, right? Fine, have fun, joke around, have a good time. But if you have a chance for other people to shoot in front of you, watch them. Watch when they miss, too. Watch how when you thought the wind was going left to right, how the dirt that kicked up actually went right to left. And then go, oh, wait, I was wrong. That's, by the way, knowing when you're wrong, I would rather you miss. If I was teaching you to shoot, Dave, I'd rather that you missed and told me why you missed than have you hit and have no idea why you hit. Because as long as you know what went wrong, you can learn from that. If you are accidentally good, we're never going to make you a better shooter.
Well,
right?
And that's one thing that you've talked about in your podcast a few times is the communication with the spotter and the sniper, right? And especially when you have like a student out there, your first question is, was that a good trigger pull? Were you on target? Was everything okay? Not the first communication is the correction, right? It's like,
well, I'd rather you not know you even hit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if I'm teaching somebody or working with as a sniper team, I'm not going to go over and go, great hit, high five.
Right.
I'm going to say, how was that shot? You'd be surprised how when a perfect result happens, the person, when you ask them, they go, oh, I kind of pulled it. I did this and I did that. Oh, all right. Well, let's work on that next time. Let's try it again. And they go, well, wait a minute. How was the shot? It doesn't matter. Try it again. We need to get you better at shooting, right? So I would watch the wind out there at the stage, and I would, no matter what, I would pay attention to the wind. What I mean is, you'd be surprised how many times people will shoot at a 300-yard target. And I ask them, is there any wind out there? And they say, yeah, there's a little bit. It's left to right. I can feel it on my skin a little bit. I can see it out there a little bit. It's going left to right. But I don't know, is it 2 miles an hour or 5 miles an hour or 10? I don't know how much left to right it is. But it's just maybe a little bit. Okay, so there's your scenario. Maybe a little bit left to right wind, 300-yard target. You'd be surprised how many people will aim at the center of the target.
Right.
Which I'm going to say, well, you just told me there's wind. They go, yeah, but I don't know how much. I don't know how much to calculate. Well, if you aim at the center, you're guaranteed either that you're going to hit exactly where you're aiming, or the bullet is going to be blown to the right, which means you've given yourself half of the target width to work with.
Right.
Why in the world would you not aim at the left edge? So even if you're not going to do a calculation, at least being aware there's a left to right wind, you are going to give yourself twice as wide of a target than everyone else.
Okay. So then if you hold the center and you do miss just off the right edge, you call a miss, or someone, you're in a match where someone can call that miss for you. What do you do with your correction?
You make bold adjustments. I think you're setting me up for that one.
Yeah,
I think you do the answer on that one.
Yes,
if you miss an inch off the
right
right side of the target, people will, without thinking about it, they'll miss an inch to the right. And first off, if you're out there practicing, stop talking about how much you missed. That's one of my pet peeves too as students. I don't ever allow them to talk about the miss. I make them talk about what they need to do to get a hit.
Okay. Why is that?
Okay. Well, one, it doesn't matter because the end point of the discussion of how much you missed ends up being how to make the hit anyway. Why not shut up and shoot before the wind changes? Right?
It's a very good point.
So here's what happens with people. Bang. Oh, I think I missed. Yeah, you missed. Oh, where was it? Oh, just off the side. Oh, which side? Oh, the right side? How far? I don't know. Probably about like an inch. The hell of the elevation. The elevation looked good. Man, that was a cool shot. Dang it, we're going to get it. Well, go a little bit further left this time. How much? I don't know. Give me a half left. That's the discussion.
Ryan, this conversation reminds me of like when a call's dropped and you call back and they're like, was that you or me? It doesn't effing matter. We're back on the phone now, so let's finish this conversation.
Yes. Yeah, so that's exactly the conversation that happens, and none of that matters. All that's going to do is cause confusion. Now, I'm not training snipers anymore, but you are under some stress in a 3-gun match. If you are trying to work together or shoot, what you should do is the shooter should shoot and call the shot, good or bad. The spotter should see where the miss was and make an adjustment. So if you miss an inch off the right side of the target, it does no good to tell them they missed an inch to the right and then have to say, aim more left. Why don't you just say, aim more left? Right?
Right.
It's a lot faster and it's less confusing too. And you're like, wait, left, right? Which one did you say? So what you do though, when you miss an inch off the right side of the target, let's call it an IPSC target. You miss an inch off the right. Many people will go, oh man, you missed just an inch off the right. Well, let's see. That's 600 yards. So a minute of angle at 600 yards is 6 inches. That's a quarter. Do a quarter minute left. No, you don't adjust by how much you missed off the edge because you're not trying to shoot the edge. You're trying to shoot the center. So you always measure from the center of the target. So if we were shooting, Dave, and you shot You told me it was a good shot, and I saw the bullet just graze off the right side of the target. All I'm going to say is aim at the left side of the target. It doesn't matter how many minutes that is, or how many mils that is, or even what the distance is. I know under these wind conditions with that rifle and with you, if you aim at the center, the bullet blows a half of the target width to the right. So I'm just going to have you aim at the left edge of the target, let the bullet blow into the center. And you and I together in 5 seconds would have a hit on the target when other people would be still discussing how close it was.
I love that. I love the simplicity of it, and I love the bold correction. So for me, I told the story at the start of the show. My friend Josh told me about your podcast when we were on our way to shoot a match. We shot this match in Texas, ton of wind, ton of long range shooting. And later on, when I heard you talk about bold corrections on your podcast, like immediately is like, shit, I could have used that like before the match, because I found myself making those small corrections as well. Like if you're 1 inch off the target, well, hold 2 inches more to the left, and again, I was thinking in those units, hold 2 inches more to the left, and then you'll hit the target. But you're, like you said, you're hitting the target, and you're only giving yourself a partial target to work with, whereas like a bold correction will give you the entire target to work with anyway.
Well, and a bold correction, at least on my third shot, I'll get it. So what I mean is, most people, if you're honest with yourselves, and you had to take multiple shots at a target, talking like 5 shots, and you had to keep adjusting to try and hit it, most of the time you inched your way there.
Right.
Half mil left, 3/4 mil left, full mil left, 1.25 mil left, 1.5 mil left. Got it. Why don't you just say 2 mils left the first time?
Yeah.
Go crazy. Go way too much.
Well,
and at least if you miss on the other side of the target, you can see now exactly what the 2 mil difference looks like, and you know exactly the right hold now. You've given yourself like a measuring tape out there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So instead of going, ooh, that's what a 1/4 mil did, and then having to picture a bunch more of those 1/4 mils to get the target, go too far. You might not hit it, but at least on the third shot you will.
Well, and you'll hear people just talk about that in a discussion a lot. Like, oh yeah, I made a shot at 600 yards. I had to walk it in, so it took me a few rounds. But like, why don't you leap it in?
Exactly right. I can see arguments for both sides, but for me, especially if I'm trying to help someone learn, I'd rather leap past it because then I know exactly how far to come back rather than inching my way there. Right. That's the other thing for a spotter. If you're working together, why you should have the same units of measurement is I would like the spotter to always be holding the wind call that the shooter holds. Okay. So if let's say we're shooting mil scopes and I tell you to hold 1 mil left, that means you're moving your reticle to the left of the target 1 mil, which actually means that you're using the mil dot to the right of the reticle on the target.
Yes.
That confuses people a lot. So I ask people when you get a wind call to always ask yourself the direction first, then how much. And back to the measuring tape analogy, it doesn't matter which way you measure 12 inches. It's 12 inches either way, right? So the mils in your reticle are just a measuring tape. So think of the direction first, then the unit. So I tell Dave, hold 1 mil left. I want you to think, all right, I'm going to move it to the left and then stop at the first mil I get to. Okay, so there's your 1 mil left hold. I, as a spotter, should be holding 1 mil left also. So when you shoot and I see the bullet impact right at the 1.5 mil mark, all I have to say is 1.5 mil left.
I got you.
I now know exactly what the right call is for you. If I don't hold the same wind call, I have to go, man, he missed by about this many feet. That's about 0.5 mil. What was the wind call? That was a mil, so it's about 1.5 mil left. Why don't you just hold it? Right?
Okay.
And you just watch where it impacts on the reticle and tell them that's the new wind call. And now we have really fast communication. Or as we started adopting in the military, you have a follow-up shot. If I'm already holding the 1 mil left and I see your bullet impact, I can just move the 0.5 mil and pull the trigger. And now you have a super quick follow-up shot with a perfect wind call.
I gotcha. Okay.
So there you go.
Wow, that makes a lot of sense. All right, so sometimes we'll have matches where coaching is allowed and they can call your misses, right? If you need to brief someone in, say, the 15 minutes leading up to you shooting, how much information would you give them and to help you? I mean, all selfish, right? You need to give them as much information as possible in a short amount of time to help you achieve hits. What are you going to tell them?
So they're allowed to tell me anything more than hit or miss?
Yes. Yeah. So some matches, and specifically one I'm thinking of is the Vortex Shooter Source 3-Gun Championship. Coaching is allowed. So if you're running through like a run and gun stage with your pistol, they can go 2 on the right, 2 on the left. You missed that one. Come back. That kind of thing. So that type of coaching is allowed. And sometimes we're allowed to do it for juniors too. Just depends on the match rules, right? So that's the context I'm thinking of.
Now, in that case, I will break my normal advice because I'm assuming I don't know this person and I'm just doing it for just this match.
Yeah.
I would just have them shout out which direction I missed, honestly.
Oh, okay.
That's horrible advice. That's not what I would normally do, but we're talking in the middle of a stage match.
Right.
I'd either ask them to just stay quiet and let me shoot it and tell me when I got my hits because I probably will be able to figure out what I'm doing. But if I do need the help, it's just going to be sometimes you have bushes or stuff out there. You have no idea if you missed left or right.
Right.
I'd like to know, and I'm going to make the adjustment. I don't want them giving me adjustments because I don't know who they are.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So I'm going, oh, give me half mil more left. Okay. No, I mean to the right. Wait, no, I mean I don't want that.
Well, and they can be doing the thing that we were talking about too of walking it in rather than making the bold adjustments.
So the numbers are just going to mess with me. The only reason I would need help is if I didn't see where the impact was.
Right.
And so just telling me to the left, I have no problem making a bold adjustment the other way. To do it. Matter of fact, if you're shooting a long range target just for practice and you can't tell where the bullet is, be bold that way too. You're like, man, did that go to the bushes behind it or to the bush? I don't know if it hit or what. Just go 2 mils up high, left or right, and shoot the trigger again, and then see where the bullet impacts and give yourself an idea. So I would probably just have them do that. Now, if it was my partner, I would coach them up on how to actually communicate, and I'd have them like the little vortex monoculars I love that have the reticle in them, so they could just sit there with a monocular with a reticle in it and be shooting. And we can be calling out the hits and misses or exactly what they need to be doing. I'd rather that. But if it's a stranger, I'd kind of not want the math to conflict.
Right. Yeah, I love that that optic too. I've got one of those recce's in my my console, and it's an 8 power, and my scope's a 6 power, but it has the same reticle, and so I love to use that in walkthrough to see what I'm going to be seeing.
Exactly right. And just speaking the same language can really, really help.
Well, I've watched a lot of Hollywood movies. I've seen Sniper with Tom Berenger many, many times, and he preaches the 1 shot, 1 kill, right? And you seem to be the opposite of like throw one out there and see what it does, and then make a correction from there. Yeah,
I'm 1 box, 1 kill. Yeah,
I like that'd be a great T-shirt, by the way.
He and I were joking around about that, and he said that actually in one of their team rooms. So Delta Force Sniper, one of their team rooms in the door, they had 1 box, 1 kill as the motto on the door. Just because 1 shot, 1 kill, sure, that's what we all want to get, but that's not always practical. Bad guys change directions when they're walking. They stop to tie their shoe or take their sandal off when the bullet's mid-flight. You can't control everything.
Right.
But instead of sitting there worrying about it, shooting, seeing that it was 2 feet to the right, having a good enough shot that as soon as you see the impact, adjusting 2 feet and shooting again, within 2 seconds, you just got a hit. Maybe sometimes that works.
Well, and in competition, we don't need to be surreptitious, right? So we can throw siders out there, to see what the wind is doing.
Right. Make your first best guess, but then adjust off of that. Here's another thing. Don't worry about why it missed. That's the other life lesson thing too, when I say don't focus on the misses. Sometimes people get their head so wrapped around why they missed. So I was just in South Africa doing that hunt, and I was there with a buddy of mine, and we got to confirm 0 on the rifles when we first got there before we went out hunting, and he shot, and he was like 2 minutes low from where his 0 normally is, and it just destroyed his brain. He's like, did the scope get damaged in transit, or is it the ammo, or is it? And I'm sitting there laughing, going, just adjust up 2 minutes. Who cares?
Yeah.
He goes, well, no, but could my barrel have gotten bent? Could the crown have gotten damaged? Or what could have happened? I don't want the scope. It doesn't matter why it's 2 minutes low. Come up 2 minutes and let's go hunt. And we kept talking about that for the next few days because he just still couldn't wrap his mind around it. Same thing at a match. Who cares why it went 5 mils to the right? You know what you need to do to hit? Hold 5 mils left. Get a hit.
Yeah.
Then later figure out if you accidentally left a full revolution of windage on your scope. But what matters now is hitting the target, right? That's why I tell people too about the twist rate of your barrel, as I already brought up before, or the markings on your turret. Who cares if you have shapes on your turret? If you know that you have to turn to triangle to hit the target, then turn to triangle and hit the target. Stop stressing about, well, that went low, but I thought it was at 300. Well, maybe it's not 300. Maybe it's this. Maybe it's, well, did I get my adjustment right? I did. Am I in the right power? You know what?
Yeah.
That's for later. Oh, I hit low, aim higher. Now I hit it. Then go back and diagnose. Does that make sense?
It totally does. I see this a lot of times in the 0 range as well. If a match has 0 range, it's generally under 100 yards. Sometimes it's 50, and I'll see guys. We travel long distances, elevation's different, climate's different, etc. So they'll go and get their 0. I'll do it sometimes too. Generally, I don't have enough long range ammo to sit and throw a bunch of rounds around there. But I'll see some people say, okay, well, it's a half inch off at 50 yards, or it's an inch off at 50 yards, and it shouldn't be like that. And I'm trying to figure it out. It's like, dude, just click that little dialy thing and get it to where it hits that black mark, and let's go shoot.
Exactly right. I mean, figure it out someday. If your gun's broken, figure it out later. But right now, it doesn't matter. What matters right now is you missed one direction. Make a correction and hit the target.
Right. Right. Yeah, exactly. All right, Ryan. Well, you brought up the speed of the bullet, weight of the bullet talk. So I want to kind of dig into that a little bit here, and then I'm gonna have a last couple questions here. We're gonna let you go because you were concerned, but we've actually done about 70 minutes here already. So
I warned you. So I talk a lot. We'll make it work.
No, it's totally fine. I love it. The light bullet versus the heavy bullet. So in 3-gun, like with that context, 55 grain versus say a 75 or 77 grain, something like that. If you are shooting a precision target, not just blaster, hoser, paper targets on the range, is there a better than the other?
Yeah, the heavier, definitely. If you're going for precision, no matter the distance, go the 75 or 77.
Why?
2 reasons. One is most precision bullets are the heavier weighted bullets for 223.
Okay.
Most 55 grain bullets you're going to find are plinking bullets.
What about varmint loads? Like they make super light rounds to explode prairie dogs.
Yeah, they sure do. And they can be accurate for sure. They're probably not match grade rounds, meaning the ogive or the curve of the bullet might not be perfectly suited to go into most people's chambers. The shape of the bullet might be more for the varmint hunting. So there's 2 schools of thought here. One is, first off, we're talking less wind deflection, right? Because if the bullet's accurate, it's accurate. What you're asking me is which one's going to move in the wind less, or maybe less adjustment for distance, right?
Right.
Okay. So 2 schools of thought. One is get a heavy enough bullet that the wind can't blow it off course. Or 2 is get a fast enough bullet that the wind doesn't have enough time to blow it off course. Well, both are perfectly valid solutions. I prefer the heavier because I like hitting the target harder and smacking the steel and knocking it down, or seeing the impact in the dirt more. That's one reason for heavier bullet. But just the other really is something about a longer, skinnier bullet tends to fly better in the air. It just really does better. So I like 75, 77 grain match bullets for shooting precision distance. They buck the wind a little better. They stay on course better. They tend to group better for me, and they definitely hit the target harder.
I gotcha. Okay. So when you're talking about speed, so a faster bullet is touched by wind less, a heavier bullet is affected by wind less, right? Is there like a magic combination, or sort of, right?
Yeah.
Is there a magic combination of heavy and fast in, say, a 223 cartridge? Because again, that's our context, that is going to provide you both.
I think broken record here. I think the best of both worlds is the 75 grain bullet. I think it's still fast enough. I don't think a lighter bullet gets you fast enough to make an appreciable wind difference.
Oh, okay.
But I think the higher weight on the scale of the equation there works better. There's no perfect anything, though. I mean, there's 6.5 bullets are probably the perfect. I mean, we've known this for over 100 years now. People are just starting to figure it out here with 6.5 Creedmoor. But the Finnish military did a test, I think, in 1903, where they just did all these ballistic calculations and tests on what the perfect diameter bullet was in 6.51, because it was the right size for the density of lead and copper and for the length and everything, just to be super efficient.
Huh. Well, just like the firearms industry, we're a little slow to catch on.
Yeah, they're like, oh, yeah. So, yeah, Americans running around going, look at this 6.5 Creedmoor, it's amazing. And a bunch of Swedish dudes are like, yeah, we figured that out a long time ago. So, I mean, even the 260 Remington is essentially a 6.5 Creedmoor. It just never took off because, yeah, there's I think not even a full gram of water capacity difference between the cases. Same overall length, same bullet, same velocity, same magazine, same parent case, same everything.
Huh.
260 has slightly more. I mean, like not even a gram of water more case capacity, so you can get that bullet going a little faster. But because it's got a little bit more capacity, the neck is a little further out, which means you can't get the bullet seated out as far.
Right.
So the 6.5 kind of does it. Yeah, 260 and 6.5 are essentially a wash.
So is that as similar as like a 223 and a 5.56 are?
Yes.
Okay.
It is. Because 223 and 5.56 are different on pressure.
Right.
right?
And
you should
shoulder's
never shoot a
chamber's a little bit different, right?
Yep. You should never shoot a 5.56 in a 2.23, but you can do the opposite.
Right.
308 is actually flip-flopped. The military flavor, the 7.62 NATO, is actually weaker than 308 Winchester.
Huh, okay.
So believe it or not, the military, people think military is the hotter, more powerful. Well, no, in 2.23 it is, but not for the 308.
Right.
So anyway.
I gotcha. Okay.
So yeah, there's never a perfect bullet, which is why every year we come out with the newest new fad, and I just don't get it. I only recently bought into 6.5 Creedmoor. I think it's been 2 months ago now. I finally said, all right, I'll shoot 6.5 Creedmoor. Because yes, it's better. It's better on paper without a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
But so is everything else. Every year a new cartridge comes out that's better on paper.
Right.
But I wanted a bullet that I could find. I go to a match and I forgot my TSA, lost my ammo. I want to be able to go to the sporting goods store and get the ammo. And it was 2 months ago when I saw that Walmart had 3 SKUs of 6.5 Creedmoor and only 2 SKUs of 308 on the shelves.
Ooh.
I was like, that's my sign. 6.5 Creedmoor is here to stay. I mean, if I would have adopted 260 when it came out, which is ballistically the same dang thing, I'd be out of luck. Where are you going to find 260?
Yeah, and there's like 6.5 Grendel, 6.8 something or other that
6.8 SPC, 30 AR, 224 or whatever Valkyrie. What is it?
Yeah, 224 Valkyrie.
Yeah, I don't get that one at all.
Why would you want a tiny little hole again? Isn't the 223 a mouse gun?
Look at the ballistics. Look at the velocity. Well, first off, even Federal is having to admit that those velocities aren't attainable in the real world. Okay, but even if they are, you see the length of those barrels? At SHOT Show, I could tell when every rifle on the wall was a 224 Valkyrie because it had like a 26-inch barrel on an AR-15.
Right.
I'm like, of course you can get a big velocities out of a super long barrel.
Shocker.
Of course. How is that better? And they say, well, I said, why would you take that over 6.5 Creedmoor? And they say, well, I can get these great velocities. I said, you can have better performance of a 6.5 Creedmoor, hands down. And I go, well, we can do this out of an AR-15 receiver. And I come back with, why does that matter? And they say, well, an AR-10 receiver is like an inch longer. I'm like, okay, so you'll put a 26-inch barrel on a gun to use an inch shorter receiver. Okay. Now, 224 Valkyrie might take off. I would have been wrong about 6.5 Creedmoor. Mm-hmm. I thought 6.5 Creedmoor was just as much of, not a fad, but a niche cartridge as 6.5 by 47 Lapua, as it was with 260 Remington, as it was any of the other ones in the same family.
Mm-hmm.
But somehow 6.5 Creedmoor took off. Awesome. I'm finally adopting it now. And I'm glad I didn't adopt the 260, or I'd have a bunch of guns in a caliber that I can't find anywhere.
Yeah. I'm kind of the same way, and 3-gun's really great for me because then it forces me to use 223, 12 gauge, and 9mm, and then I have a reason for saying, like, I'm not going to buy any more stuff.
Yeah, 223 works really good. Those heavy bullets in 223 are magic, man.
Yeah. So
75 grain bullets are great.
So on the Valkyrie beating a dead horse kind of thing, I don't understand the allure of getting something really tiny like that for long range precision when you can just do a 308 or a 6.5 Creedmoor. Why would we step backwards in diameter and bullet weight? I don't understand that.
Because you might have as much 223 ammo as you want. And if you get a new gun, you now need to go buy 5,000 more rounds of 224 Valkyrie in a new gun.
Oh.
And the firearms industry is in the business of selling guns and ammo.
Right. I gotcha.
So now you want 224 Valkyrie? New gun, buddy. Bunch more ammo. That's why they do it. Now, it might be an improvement. I mean, 6.5 Creedmoor was an improvement. I think 308 was an improvement over 30-06 and other cartridges. I'm not saying we shouldn't have advancements. I'm just saying let's everybody hold off on the newest fangled fad and let it get adopted, let it get going for a while, or else, like I already said, you'd have a bunch of 260s right now, and you'd be like, dang it, I should have waited for the 6.5 Creedmoor, and dang it, I should have waited for the whatever. So, largely stick with something NATO that you can find anywhere in the world. You can find cheap blinking ammo. I'm even now, the parts of the military have adopted 6.5 Creedmoor. That's another reason I finally went to it. SOCOM is taking 6.5 Creedmoor. They're actually getting 6.5 Creedmoor belt-fed machine guns right now.
No way.
Yep, 100%. I know the company linking the ammo, and I know the company making the machine guns.
Huh.
They are getting belt-fed 6.5 Creedmoor is going to take over. It is the new perfect intermediate round, where 40, I think, was the worst intermediate between 9 and 45. I think 6.5 Creedmoor is the perfect intermediate between 223 and 308. So much so now that even though I've been the longest holdout for 308, I wouldn't buy a new gun in 308 anymore.
Interesting.
I took everything in Africa with the 6.5 Creedmoor. And on paper, it loses for hunting, and it just destroyed everything. I have pictures on my Instagram of my wildebeest that everyone was just blown away that the thing essentially dropped and died with a little 6.5 Creedmoor. It's the way.
Good to know. Good to know. All right. The 6.5 Creedmoor, here to stay. Going to be belt-fed machine guns. That's how you know. As far as, something you just mentioned briefly, the super long barrels on the Valkyries, do you have like a rule of thumb as far as barrel length for the type of guns that you use for, precision shooting or 3-gun?
Yes, as short as possible.
Okay. And is there a diminishing return? Because we can now talk about
Absolutely.
like 11.5 inch SBRs.
So if I want 6.5 Creedmoor, I want it because of its long range performance. Okay.
Right.
So shooting 6.5 Creedmoor out of a 4-inch barrel, so I get a giant fireball and the bullet doesn't get up to speed. Okay, that's stupid. So that's not as short as possible. That's shorter than possible, right? Like for a 308, I think a perfect barrel length is 18 inches.
Okay.
I love an 18-inch 308 for a target long range shooting gun. All those NSSF videos, you see me with my 700 and 308 in those videos.
Mm-hmm.
That's an 18-inch barreled gun. Shorter barrels are more accurate than longer barrels.
And we need a context for short barrels because I've heard this as well, and I've seen guys head to like 14.5 inch barrels for 3-gun. I personally use an 18-inch barrel, which in the precision community would be considered short, but that's considered long in 3-gun.
I think 16 or 18 inches for a 223 is about perfect because I want that heavier bullet to get up to speed to do its job.
Right.
And I'm not too worried about maneuverability. Now, back in the military and I got to get in and out of a vehicle or in and out of a building or stuff like that, okay, maybe I want shorter. I think 223 suffers with short barrels because it needs to get up to velocity to do its job. A slow-moving 223 bullet is just about useless in competition or in real life.
Right.
The only thing that bullet has going for it is its velocity. Where 308, I don't mind shedding some of that velocity because I'm still throwing a big rock down range.
Right.
Right. So I think 18, maybe 20 inches is perfect sweet spot for 308. Even though your bullet will be slower than if you had a 24-inch barrel, I think it's worth it. 6.5 Creedmoor, I think 20 is a little shorter than I'd like. Maybe for 3-gun I do a 20-inch barrel because who cares? I want some maneuverability. But it really shines in like a 22-inch barrel or maybe a 24-inch barrel as a target gun. I guess it really depends on the use too. I bet people ask you all the time, what gun should I get?
Oh, totally. All the time.
I don't know. What car should I get?
Yeah.
You need to know the use first, right? If I need to haul lumber, I should probably get a pickup truck. But if I want gas mileage, maybe I should get a Prius. And by the way, both of those vehicles suck at each other's jobs. So what gun should I get? I don't know. What do you want? I want to shoot long range precision rifle. Get a 6.5 Creedmoor with a 22, 24-inch barrel. I want to shoot 3-gun. Get yourself a 223. So it all depends.
Perfect. All right, Ryan. Well, just a couple more questions here. Where do you see the industry as a whole right now? You're kind of on the inside from the perspective of you used to work at some of the bigger companies. Now you're in like more of a consulting role. We're in like an interesting time. What do you see as the state of the firearms industry in general?
I think we're going to have more gun laws. I think we're going to lose some of our rights. I'm not excited about that. I just think there's going to be another school shooting. That's a safe bet. There's sick people out there. And we're not doing anything appreciably to make things safer. I think that obviously more guns means less crime, but not everyone agrees with me. I think we're going to have more people making emotional decisions and try to force more gun laws. And even though I think President Trump has done amazing things to keep winning on tons of stuff, he doesn't quite seem to get, I think, fundamental civil liberties on guns. So even at the national level, if we keep winning, I think we're going to lose in the state level. And I tell people that too. Stop thinking, oh, Trump's here, we'll be fine. He's done nothing to stop California from banning straws.
Yeah.
Because he can't. That's not his job. Even if he wanted to, he couldn't stop them from doing that. So I think the real risk for our gun rights is the local levels. That's going to happen. I think polymer cased ammo is really going to take off. I think that's the new future. I think making cartridges out of brass is silly. We essentially still have the same cartridges that cowboys used.
Yep.
A brass cartridge with a primer with some gunpowder and a piece of lead flying out the front. All these advancements in the cartridge is the same. I think polymer cases is really the way to go. It'll be cheaper. It'll be more accurate because you can have better case capacity, more consistency there. You'll have less heating up and stuff for the chamber. So I think that's where we'll go there.
All right. Yeah, that sounds interesting. I'm ready for cheaper and more accurate, though.
Have you looked at polymer cases at all?
I haven't. I didn't even know it was like an actual thing that's being sold now. It's
not being sold. The technology is being developed. They're figuring it out. It makes it lighter too. So you're thinking military context. You don't have corrosion of the case now. You don't have the weight. You don't have all those problems because it's plastic.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but that's like one of the reasons for moving from the 30-06 or the 308 cartridge to 223, right? Because you can carry more
Absolutely.
rounds with you.
Yep. Well, soldiers, as a law of averages, combat is full of misses.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a low hit percentage. So you want to get more bad guys. You got to give them more chances to shoot.
Right.
So that's why they wanted lighter ammo for sure. So you lighten soldiers' load. You lighten people's load they're carrying around. That's one good thing. You get rid of the corrosion problem. That's another good thing. You get rid of hot brass being shot out at people.
That's nice.
That's another good.
I've got all kinds of great burn marks on my right arm from that.
Right. You don't have that with the polymer. Now you're looking for accuracy. You can get that internal case capacity perfect every single time versus brass, which can change a little bit. Now they're trying to figure out reloading. They're trying to figure out how that's going to work. But yeah, that's the way of the future.
Well, if it promises everything you need to, why would you need to reload?
True, but because you're still going to buy inaccurately loaded ammo. So I'm not mad at manufacturers when they don't make accurate ammo. Every manufacturer out there could make something accurate. It's just what you're willing to pay for.
Right.
So you can go buy plinking 223. It's not going to be accurate, even if it's got a polymer case.
Right. Yeah,
but it could be. Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about the shooting sports then. Where do you see the shooting sports headed, and what sort of role do you see that playing in like the political environment?
More kids and more women. I think that's awesome. I think 3-gun's one of those sports that I think can really open up to them because it's, like I said, so family friendly, and the stage is, even though you're competing against other people, you're kind of competing against yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I love sports, shooting sports in general, but especially things like 3-gun. In that it's one of the playing fields where men and women really can be on the same level.
Mm-hmm.
They'll still have men's, women's divisions. I don't always know why they do that because it's usually not a strength issue, for the difference.
Right.
So I think that's what's going to happen. And I think that'll help in culture when you see more kids doing it and more women doing it. And it's, a bunch of less old white dudes with guts like me. That's the face of the industry. I don't know what's going to happen to the NRA. I don't know if the NRA is long for this world. I think
really,
we're probably, yeah.
Why is that, Ryan?
Financial troubles right now, political troubles. We're getting mainstream articles. There's an article in Reuters this morning talking about how the NRA is losing its base. How the NRA doesn't necessarily appeal as much to you and me as they do to what I would call like Gun 1.0.
They definitely don't appeal to me because they don't back anything that I love and appreciate about the Second Amendment. It seems like they're more willing to have concessions in like a British Australian sort of model of
exactly right.
Only
so
the rich
they're
get
losing
guns.
their base. They're losing the base. They're appealing to the wrong people. They're having financial trouble. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're not long for this world. The problem is we as an industry need to recognize that now and start coming up with something that does.
Mm-hmm.
Or else we're going to have a little bit of a vacuum when they're gone and not have the next thing ready and lose some ground.
Well, and then we're, if we, as much as, I like to give the NRA a hard time, they are the reason that we're, still able to have a voice because there's several million members.
Of course.
Is the next best thing like the NSSF or GOA, or is there a next best thing?
It's probably not the NSSF. So the NSSF and the NRA divide each other's roles at the cash register. So the NSSF is the industry. So they work for the the retailer, the distributors, the manufacturers. But at the point of the sale, the NRA is really the advocate of the consumer, of the end user, right?
And so does it
maybe
need to
GOA?
be a consumer? Does it need to be a consumer or end user group that stands for our rights, or can it be from a manufacturer standpoint?
It can be from a manufacturer standpoint, and the NSSF does fight for it, which is what I helped do when I was there. And Larry Keene, who runs that, is just an amazing man, and I consider him a mentor and someone I look up to run these fights for us. But they run it from the industry angle. They run it from the numbers and jobs impacts and things like that. Some manufacturers, we've seen this in the industry, don't stand up for our rights. Some manufacturers don't mind that you have to buy another product from them. It's sad to say that, but it happens sometimes. So I am scared for our industry. I know I might be alone in that. I think a lot of people are feeling very comfortable right now, but I'm nervous because everybody else is comfortable right now.
Right.
So
yeah,
that's where I'm at.
It's that whole, I don't know. It's like the investment thing, it's, what the heck is that guy's name? Dude that lives in Omaha. I always forget. Berkshire Hathaway. Come on. He says
Warren
that
Buffett.
Warren Buffett, thank you. He says that when the market is in a panic and everyone's selling, you should be buying, and vice versa,
Of course.
right? So
Yeah.
I mean, what you're saying there does make sense.
Yeah, everyone's comfortable right now. And I'm like, ugh. Have you guys noticed some of the things that President Trump tweets? He's not exactly the term that Reuters used in the article this morning was a gun-fundamentalist, which I thought was kind of cool. Talking about people that are like so fundamentalist for guns that they're mad at the NRA for not being tough enough.
Yeah.
You know, how they're kind of branching away from it. He and some of the administration seem like they'd be willing to concede some gun rights in exchange for other things.
Right.
You know, and that scares me.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like the bump fire stock thing. You know, like I don't own a bump fire stock. I think they're stupid. But and I'm sad that that's the hill that we have to defend, but it is something, you know, 2A related that we have to stop, because then they're going to come after my Hyperfire or my Timney or my AR
exactly
Gold or
right.
something like that.
If you don't, no one's going to be there for you when they come after the stuff you like.
Yeah.
Also, it comes down to the question on why are we trying to infringe on the rights? I know the Second Amendment says shall not be infringed, but like it or not, current interpretation of how our constitutional law system works is you can have infringements on our civil rights. They just have to be narrowly tailored and be the least restrictive means possible to achieve the end. We need to win the argument of banning the guns won't do what you want it to do. Like if someone wants to have a discussion to ban bump stocks for whatever reason, okay, let's have the discussion. I don't think we should shut the conversation down. I think we should have the discussion. Because by the way, we hate it when the other side shuts conversations down with us. We should have the discussion. Maybe you'll educate them. And if it's for a reason that eventually makes sense, I don't know what that reason would be, maybe I'd be for it. But if the reason is to stop crime or to prevent, crimes from happening with guns, okay, now I'm definitely against it, because that's not going to work. And that's where we should be against gun laws when they do that, is say, hey guys, banning bump stocks is not going to work any more than banning shootings did.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, murder's already illegal. It's something we repeat a lot. In
so we shouldn't focus, I don't think, necessarily on the ban du jour, but instead just focus on, hold on, stop. More gun regs won't work, so why are we discussing a gun reg? So that's why I want something like a Mayday Safety or something else where you can say, that's not going to work. Stop that. Here is something that's going to work. And then I can beat them over the head when they don't do it. Then when they say, no, we're still banning bump stocks, I can say, aha, you're just trying to ban guns. Don't you dare say it's a solution, because I'm gift wrapping a solution for you and you're not taking it. So that's how I like that strategy too.
Awesome. And that means we've come full circle. We got to call back to the first 10 minutes of the show. So Ryan, one final thought or one piece of advice for the audience, something that they can take away from our discussion today.
Stop worrying about being too precise. Enjoy an acceptable amount of accuracy and practice doing that.
I love it. Ryan, this has been awesome, man. I really do appreciate your time that you've given up for the Three Gun Show audience today and for joining me here. Thanks, man.
Thanks for having me on, Dave. I appreciate it.
Hey, before you take off, you have to check out the show notes on this one, 3gunshow.com/episode 224. So many links to everything that Ryan is up to with the Going Ballistic podcast, Mayday Safety app, plus his books, the Long Range Shooting Handbook, Safety is No Accident. Man, if you aren't motivated after this podcast, you need to check your pulse. Plus, there is a link to Arik Levy's Shooter Summit if you're into that as well. Be sure to check all that stuff out, 3gunshow.com/episode 224. Now, how do you enter to win an autographed copy of Ryan's Long Range Shooting Handbook? Well, funny story. So after we got done recording the podcast, I was like, hey, Ryan, I want to buy one of your books. I'd like you to autograph it, and I want to give it away to one of my listeners. And he's like, that sounds great, Dave, but you can't buy it. I'm just going to give it to you. Which, how cool is that? Like, what a guy, right? So go to 3gunshow.com/episode 224 under the heading Important Links from the Podcast, which we do every week. Look for a link that says enter to win here. Click on it and follow the instructions. This is a contest for early listeners to the Three Gun Show, so you only have a week to enter. We'll be drawing the winner on Wednesday, November 28th at midnight, so don't delay. One lucky listener will win a copy of his book, The Long Range Shooting Handbook, and it is autographed by Ryan Kleckner himself. This podcast is brought to you by Breda USA, Italian shotguns that are the best in the world, and this is a shotgun tech tip from Team Breda. Hey, this is Dave Hartman from the Three Gun Show, and I've got Josh Tanner here with Team Breda, and we've got a shotgun tech tip for you. Josh, what do you got?
All right, today we're going to talk about point of aim, point of impact change on a shotgun when you run a lot of rounds down through the gun. So on a long shotgun stage where you've shot a lot of birdshot, the barrel will heat at a different rate than the ribs do, which can start to affect the point of aim, point of impact versus a cold gun. Now, I found it to be much less of an issue with these Breda shotguns, I think due to their barrel manufacturing process, but it's still important to go out and warm your shotgun up really, really hot, shoot a lot of rounds through it, and check and see what that point of aim, point of impact is different with a warm gun versus a cold gun.
All right, thanks, Josh. That's your shotgun tech tip from Breda Shotguns. Check out Breda's B12i 3-gun ready inertia-driven shotgun at BredaUSA.com. That's BREDA. This podcast is brought to you by Armalite, the original. Armalite rifles put the AR in AR-15. The rifles themselves come with 1 8 twist barrels, match barrels, 18-inch or 13.5-inch with a 15-inch or 12.5-inch handguard, Timney trigger, Luth AR stock, adjustable gas system, tunable comp, a patented tunable comp. This thing's ready to go right out of the box for a 3-gun with no additional modifications other than putting on a nice optic. I myself use a Vortex Viper PST 1-6 when I'm shooting TAC Ops or their Spitfire when I'm shooting limited. Check them out at armalite.com. Quick reminder that if you enjoyed this episode of the podcast, subscribe in iTunes, Google Play, Podcast Addict, or wherever you get your podcast content, so you will always get the very latest. Thank you so much for downloading, listening, and subscribing to the show. I'm Dave Hartman, and I'll see you on the range.
If you are finished, unload, show clear.